Hi, today we have Cynthia Ruchti, author Cynthia Ruchti, with us today. Cynthia, thank you for joining us.
It's my joy. It's my privilege.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a wife and a mom and a grandmother of 6 adorables who range from 20 to 2 years old.
Oh, wow.
So we get run the gamut of everything. And I began originally thinking my career or my side hustle or whatever it was going to be was working in the chemistry lab, and I moved from that very quickly after about 7 years to being a stay-at-home mom and making really great homemade baby food and a garden and making all our own clothes, and that was in the 70s. So then I transitioned to wanting to do something that would stimulate my brain as well as these other creative endeavors, and took a couple of correspondence courses in writing, never dreaming that that would lead into anything beyond just a magazine article here or there. But what it led to was a radio broadcast that was on the air, a scripted radio broadcast that was on the air for 33 years.
Wow.
And toward the end of its run, before we retired it, it was Monday through Friday, and 15 minutes that were both at the beginning kind of a slice of life scene from everyday life, musical interlude, and then devotional thoughts that would bring some kind of hope or insight or wisdom or something to what that scene might look like from everyday life. And it was a joy ride the whole time, and knuckle gripping, and throughout all that time period. But toward the end of it, I wondered, could I write something more than 15 minutes worth of material? Could I write a novel? And began to study what that would take to write a novel. I write both fiction and nonfiction, which is kind of an unusual mix because normally it's one or the other. But in my particular case, I'd been doing that for so many years that it was a much more natural leap.
Yeah, so, and what kind of books do you write?
I write specifically for the market of people who are looking for hope. In fact, my tagline is, I can't unravel, I'm hemmed in hope. And that finds its way into both the nonfiction books that I write, the fiction books that I write, the novels that I write. I usually say the nonfiction are the things I'd like to hand to the characters in my novels. This is what you need, honey. Take a look at this idea. And I write also devotionals for guideposts through Mornings with Jesus. I've done that since 2014. Often get a chance to connect with readers that way, which is really great.
So how do you research kind of that stuff, again, for lack of a better word?
I live life, and then I keep my eyes open and my ears open. So if I'm paying attention to what my friends are going through, what family members are going through, what my neighbors are going through, and the community, and then broader than that too, what's of concern to people out there in the world, that usually is a great deal part of it. Obviously with devotions, I need to know what does God have to say to that subject, to that topic. So it's important that I know that too, and that's definitely part of the research. But most of the time, and with the novels as well, it's watching what ordinary people are going through. I write in particular women's fiction, which is a lot of family angst, family drama, or the personal emotional journey of the characters. So there's deep emotional stuff going on, and I jokingly tell my kids I don't need to keep a diary, just read my books. You'll know what's going on in my life or the life of those I care about.
And yeah, how do you get through the emotional scenes? Because I think I'd be a mess.
I am a mess. That's exactly how I do that. There are times when I have to stop because it's so gripping, especially in the last book that was published just recently. Facing the Dawn is a book that deals with grief and loss and some of the traumas that we face with what teenagers are going through these days. And it was loss piled upon loss, and there were several places where I had to stop and say, oh, do I have to go there? Do I have to go that deep? And I knew I had to for the reader's sake. The reader is always on my mind. And I knew that if people around me were going through these kind of struggles, so would the readers be going through that as well. And sometimes it's that you can only do that a little chunk at a time. You might have to write that scene and then let it simmer for a while. There's one scene in particular in Facing the Dawn that I was very concerned about writing because I knew it was going to be so tender and especially raw for a particular section of the readership, and wrestled with it for a while. Dare I write that scene because it was so tender and heart-wrenching, and I found a way to do that I hope will maintain the heart-wrenching but still have something that is warm in the middle of it as well, and tender, and rather than being offensive to those who have gone through that, hopefully it would be, yes, that's exactly what it was like. That's how drained I felt. That's how lost I felt in the middle of that kind of crisis.
Yeah, how do you get that emotion out if you've not experienced that?
In a lot of ways, it's like an actor or an actress would. Many actors and actresses either study what those people they're portraying, if it's a real life scene, are like, or they do lots and lots of research about what would that be like if I had gone through that. And then there's a deep empathy that I think some of us are born with and some of us aren't. I had to kind of grow into that empathy and compassion, but the last several novels that I've written in particular, I have found myself just like graduate school in empathy and compassion for what the characters were going through. And that part of it is sort of like an actor that steps into a role. The author will oftentimes step into that role, step into that character in order to write accurately and authentically about it. And that's always been a challenge, but it's also been a real joy when you feel like you got it right, or when readers express that you got it right.
Yeah, that's a question I wanted to ask is, do you hear from readers and how they've grown or, grieved through maybe their situation that's similar to the book, or, I guess what kind of feedback do you get?
Yeah, that's a great question. Most authors do receive reader mail that says it was a great book, or I really appreciated that, or it was a fun read, and we're very pleased with that. But I get the most joy when there are the readers who write back and say, I was really wrestling with how I was ever going to forgive my father until I read this novel. So here's a book written for entertainment, or a book written for the purpose of just the experience of reading, the joy of reading. But they come away from it with not just having enjoyed the process of reading, but also expressing that something happened in their life. Either they were, for this book, Facing the Dawn in particular, there were so many people that wrote and said, I understood my own grief better, and then was able to walk more upright through the middle of it. Or others who said, I understood why my neighbor is grieving the way she is. I haven't experienced anything like that, anything like the depth of grief that she's been going through. And when I read it and saw it on the pages of the book, that really helped me grow in my appreciation. There's another thread in the book that's about forever friendships and what a treasure that is to have friends you know you can always depend on, maybe friends that have lasted down through history with you. You don't get to see them very often, but you know that they are those treasured friends who will tell you the truth when you need it, and also kick you in the behind if you need that. And so there have been some reader responses about that as well. But that is by far the greatest joy in writing and being an author, is that element of it, is hearing from readers that they didn't just enjoy the story. We hope they always will, but that there was a takeaway, that they actually felt that they left the book experience a better person than when they came and opened the first page.
Yeah, that's well said.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what do you have coming out here in the future?
Well, I have a fun book. I sometimes like to write a little bit of sass into some of my characters, but here's a whole book that has quite a lot of sass in it.
Title named Sass.
See, right. It's a nonfiction book this time, and it's written with a writer friend of mine who happens to be one of my forever friends, Becky Melby. We've written a book called Spouse in the House, Rearranging Our Attitudes to Make Room for One Another. We were contracted to write the book and had the idea way before COVID hit, but all of a sudden when COVID hit, it wasn't just retired couples or work from home people. Everybody was working from home, or people had a business that both spouses were working on the same business out of the home. Now all of a sudden it was two people trying to keep their jobs going from home, and all the children schooling and dogs, and all of a sudden there was no more oxygen to breathe in the house. Well, that kind of concept about how whether it's retirement or whatever keeps you home 24/7, we can prepare financially for that, but few people prepare relationally for it. And the idea that sometimes it's not that we just have to survive this and get through it, and especially when it's retirement, so you know it's not going to there's no end in the future for that. Well, there is an end, but that's a whole different story. That's a different book. But where you know you have to work this out or you're going to be miserable. Right. Sometimes it's as simple as making tiny little adjustments. One of the things that my husband and I worked out, and I have to give him credit because he's the one who thought it up, but we have always had, for all the years we've lived in this house, which is a lot of years, this tiny little place where everybody bumped into one another. At the base of the stairs, there was a real bottleneck of traffic, and we were having to pass each other all the time or stand and wait for the other one to come through. Kids, visitors, everybody. And he changed his wording when we would pass each other there. He changed it to, "Excuse me, my love." And when he put the "my love" at the end of the sentence, all of a sudden the atmosphere changed. And that no longer felt like we're butting heads or we're two trains coming through the same tunnel at the same time. So we do some very practical ideas of how we can manage this when we're all together in one place, whether that's two people or a whole family. And then along with the practical is a lot of just this is a hack in a way that we found it might work for you too. Becky and I did through the chapters. She would write one part and then I would write a part, and I might start the next chapter, and then she would write not a rebuttal, but her perspective. And interestingly enough, we found that so much fun, partly because of the humor that it allowed us to bring in, but also because we had those moments where she could say a great idea and I could say, "That's fine for you, Becky, you're an angel, but in our house this did not work at all." And be very real and authentic about the truth, the frankness of what this is like. But spouse in the house, every time we say spouse in the house, whoever the crowd is, we get this. So yes, there's that. So we're hoping that that's going to really not just meet a need, but also help people laugh along the way.
And when does that come out?
That comes out September 21st.
Okay, super. Well, I thank you so much for joining us today. And I was going to ask, where are you from? Is it Wisconsin?
I am from Wisconsin. I'm from the heart of Wisconsin. Most of my stories, the novels, are set in the Midwest, the kind of Midwest ethic and that feel. And I can't speak Minnesotan very well, but I can speak the word Wisconsin and everybody knows where I'm from.
Nice. Well, I can speak Minnesotan very well for you. So, super. Thanks for joining us today, and I look forward to picking up Spouse in the House.
Thank you. Thank you.